And now back to the big story across the world. The United States has taken responsibility for an airstrike that killed 2 Iranian officials, one of whom was the commander of the country's Islamic Quds Force and possibly the second most important person in the whole country. And due to heightened tensions in Iraq, where the strike happened, and the region, the State Department is now urging U.S. citizens to leave Iraq immediately. They're also being asked to stay away from the U.S. embassy after some Iranian-backed attacks. Now, that important person, General Qasem Soleimani, the death of him due to this airstrike is one of the most significant developments in the Middle East, perhaps in the last 20 years or so. So there's a lot to unpack here. And that's why we have, calling in from Dallas, Texas right now, our international relations expert, Yvonne Davis, back on the show. Yvonne, certainly a lot to get to. Now, I'm guessing a lot of people are just hearing about Soleimani for the first time. They didn't know who he was, and it looks like pretty much everybody is in agreement that this was a bad person as far as the U.S. was concerned. He's accused of killing American service members and accused of plotting more attacks on diplomats. So if you looked at it in a vacuum, everybody agrees he needed to be neutralized. But it's not in a vacuum. The question is, what are going to be the ramifications of this strike? Are we headed to a war because of this?
Well, over 600 U.S. interests or U.S. soldiers have been attacked since Qasem Soleimani was the head of the military leader of the elite Quds Force, which the U.S. has designated a terrorist group last year officially. And so with that, it was a serious blow to the military of Iran. Iran is under the pressure to retaliate, calling what the U.S. has done an act of war. No one is sad about his death, along with Abu Mahdi, who's the head of the pro-Iranian Qatib Hezbollah. So there were 2 serious hits right there that really put a big dent in Iran. However, we are in a continued, as I've said to you before on the shows in previous times visiting with you, Tim, we are in a more escalated proxy war that we have to look at as something extremely serious. If you look at the Middle East region, there has been a gradual, slow troop increase in the region. And since this time, of course, President Trump has ordered more troops to go to the region, and it is a very unstable time, and we should expect retaliation. What I said.
If I could ask, what form would that retaliation possibly take? What could Iran do?
Well, it's going to run as it always has run. It's going to run against Iraq, Syria, Yemen, Bahrain, Saudi Arabia, Hamas, and Gaza. Every place that Iran has had influence in the Middle East, it will continue its attacks. Some say even with regards to the U.S., there may be some terrorist attacks against the U.S. The United States of America is totally prepared to address it, but it looks to be a time right now where the region could potentially be really embroiled in something very serious. And President Rouhani is under a lot of pressure to respond to the hardliners' pressure on him, because the economy in Iran is atrocious right now, and people are dying in the streets due to the situation that's happening there, the oppression that's there. So it's two-front, but they're sorely missing him. The Ayatollah Khamenei called him a martyr, but one man led Iran's military guard.
Okay, so yeah, the potential ramifications, one concern that some people have had from these airstrikes. Another set of criticisms is coming about the president's level of authority here. We've seen some Democrats, including Connecticut Senator Chris Murphy, saying, why was this not done without congressional authorization? However, on the flip side, the president is the commander-in-chief of the armed forces. Is this not well within his sphere or his jurisprudence, his jurisdiction?
Absolutely. Under the War Powers Act, he is able to he is able to order a strike like that. You have 30 to 60 and an additional 30 days to be able to declare war. However, he does have to get permission from Congress. This has been a political football that has happened under President Obama over the issue of Libya. 2000, over 31 members of Congress filed this complaint to the Supreme Court under President Clinton regarding Yugoslavia. Goes back to when the War Powers Act happened in 1973 under Nixon. So I think the issue for the Democrats are that, or that they weren't even, Republicans are kind of quiet on this, is that they weren't notified. He decided to do this unilaterally. And on the presidential side, presidents say that this is within their constitutional right, and a violation of separation of powers because they have the authority to do that as commander-in-chief. So he's well within his right to do it. It's just the process of the Gang of Eight being notified. And it wasn't surprising that Speaker Pelosi did send a letter or send a statement like that. So I think the deeper issue is that Congress has to really look at this. And we've talked about this before, Tim. You know this, about the War Powers Act, and it needs to be strengthened, it needs to be reviewed. So that's on both sides of the ledger in terms of looking at this issue.
Well, please go ahead. Finish your thought, Yvonne.
But the president, clearly, he has not been afraid to respond in situations like this. When you look at Syria and other situations, he has been quite responsive. But the question now becomes, what's next?
That's just something we're going to have to see in the coming days. We do know oil prices did spike, and we didn't even get into what Iraq's role in all of this is. I know, Yvonne, you had said, and I've seen some news reports that many people celebrating in the streets of Iraq because of the strike, but that could make our relationships with Iraq fraught as well. So I'd like to get you back on the show when we have more time in the future, because this is an ongoing concern. But thanks for taking the time to call in from Dallas, Yvonne.
Thank you. Thank you.
And of course, Fox 61 will stay on top of the latest developments.